Hi there, this is Ziebart with Plant-Based for Life. These are quick cooking classes. Today we're going to be doing creamy summer salads. So the kinds of side salads that you might take to a barbecue. One of these salads is an absolute favorite. It is one that I have never had someone that didn't like it, and that's pretty rare with any recipe. So I'm very excited to share that with you. And the other one is very versatile. So I'm hoping to give you lots of ideas and lots of options for different ways you can turn it into something, your own creation, something that you enjoy, all the flavors that you enjoy. So let's go ahead and go to the kitchen. I'll see you in a moment. Welcome. You are in my actual kitchen. Today we're going to be doing two salads. They are creamy, starchy, barbecue style salads. One is a potato salad and the other is a pasta salad. This one is really a fan favorite. It is a fantastic recipe that I have adapted from Molly Patrick, and she's got fantastic recipes on her website. When I say adapted, I've just adjusted it a little bit for my needs, upgraded it, taken out salt and extra things that we don't need. It is absolutely delicious and fantastic without any of that. As I said, it's one of these ones that you can take pretty much anywhere with you. If you're going to do a potluck or something like that, going to go on a picnic, this is an awesome one to take, because not only is it safer than one that has regular mayonnaise and eggs and things in it, because it can stand the heat without getting dangerous on you. It is delicious. It is really, really simple as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have cut and then cooked some thin-skinned potatoes. These ones are red, but the yellow ones or white ones will work too. You just want the thin-skinned ones. And if you cut these small enough, they cook up very, very quickly. So these ones took about 4 or 5 minutes. Once they came up to a boil, about 4 or 5 minutes. You really don't want to overcook. That is a big problem. If they start to get mushy, then what you're going to have is mashed potato salad, and that's not what we're going for. So we want them nice and firm, just fork tender. You should just be able to slide your fork in easily, but it shouldn't break apart in the water. Then drain immediately and let cool. This has been sitting for an hour or so, and so it's nice and cool. So let's go ahead and look at what we're going to put on top of it. We have some veggies here that we're going to add, but let's talk about the dressing first. So a lot of times with plant-based recipes, we have cashew as our base, and this is no exception. So this is a cup of soaked raw cashews. So you want the unsalted and raw if possible. You can do it with roasted as long as they're unsalted, but raw is better. So these have been soaking for a while. You want to make sure you soak them for at least a few minutes. If you have a moderate to lower end blender, I would soak them for an hour. If you want to help to soften them even more, you can soak them in hot water. That starts to cook them a little bit though, and so that will reduce their nutrition just a bit. Now remember, a cup of cashews is a lot of calories. It is a very calorie dense dressing. And so we want to make sure we add a lot of veggies. And if you have your weight loss goals, or if your health journey includes sort of lower fat as one of your targets, then there are different options that we can use instead of cashews. We can use a mixture of cashews and white beans, cashews and steamed cauliflower. You can even do, if you want to get a better ratio of omega-3 to 6. If you don't know what that means, reach out to me and I'll help explain it to you. But we want higher omega-3s and lower omega-6s. Omega-6 is in a lot of the things that we eat in standard American diet. So we want to bring up those omega-3s and bring down those omega-6 fatty acids as much as possible. And nuts tend to be a little bit higher, but things like flaxseed and chia seed are very high in omega-3. And so you can balance out that by swapping out with something like hemp seeds. Now, I want to show you something because this can get confusing. Hemp seeds, hemp hearts, shelled hemp seeds, these are all the same thing. You can get hemp hearts that are larger and they need to be cooked. They're like maybe the half the size of a pea, a garden pea. But these hemp hearts and these hemp seeds are exactly the same thing. So you can just swap these out 1 to 1, a cup of these instead of a cup of cashew for your dressing recipe. So what we want to do first is we want to drain off the water that these nuts have been soaking in. I have a dandy little blender, colander that's exactly for this purpose. Pretty much don't use it for anything else. Teeny tiny little colander that's perfect. So we don't need to rinse them or anything, just drain them, pop those right in the blender. They're nice and soft now and they're gonna blend up nice and creamy for us. The other thing I did was I soaked 2 dates in hot water. I do want to soak these in hot water because dates are very chewy, they're a bit fibrous, and so we want to get them as soft as possible. Now this date water, you can actually use that if you'd like. I've used it to make tea. It just gives you a very light, sweet flavor. Or you can just dump it. It's just soaking water, but it does have a little bit of a light, sweet taste, which is fun. I'm just going to pop these 2 softened dates in here. So you want to soak those in hot water for about 10 minutes at least. Again, if you have a lower end or moderate blender, you can soak them longer. 2 fresh garlic cloves. Now, I love fresh garlic in this dressing. The garlic is not cooked, so it's definitely going to stay raw, but the blend of ingredients in here softens the garlic perfectly. Not all dressing recipes can tolerate raw garlic and still, without having that really sharp hit. I love garlic, but there are still some situations where I'll swap this out with garlic powder. If you're a little bit more sensitive to the sharpness of garlic, is just a little too much for you, then each clove can be swapped out with 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Not garlic salt, remember, garlic powder, so just garlic. So this is 2 little cloves and it's going in. Now what we want to do is 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard. A million years ago when I used to make potato salad before I was plant-based, mustard was the key ingredient, and actually pickle juice too. That's what I used to do. So yellow mustard is great. When you're choosing your mustard, compare them, side by side with others and make sure that you're choosing the one that has the fewest ingredients and the least sodium. So another trick, when you are using something thick like mustard or nut butters or anything like that that's going to stick to your spoon, is have a look in your ingredients and see if there's a liquid that's a little bit more watery, or run your spoon under the faucet to wet it. Now we do have some apple cider vinegar that's going to go in this dressing, so I'm actually going to put that in first, and that is 2 tablespoons. Now, if you haven't seen this, this is 1 brand of apple cider vinegar. This is the one I buy most often. Trader Joe's also has one version. You want to be very careful when you measure apple cider vinegar. It is a very potent flavor. It's a little bit sweet. It's very vinegary, so you just want to be really, really careful. I'm not a careful measurer typically, but when it comes to my apple cider vinegar, I measure carefully. So 2 tablespoons of this. Fine. 2. Now that the spoon is a little bit wet, that mustard should slide off a bit more easily. And so we need 2 tablespoons of that as well. Now, if you love mustard as much as I do, you can add a bit more. You see, I'm not measuring carefully here at all. I don't mind if there's a bit more mustard. I love the sharp, tangy flavor of mustard in this. Then what we want is a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. So this is the brand that I like. Whole Foods also has a brand that I use that I quite like. This is Bragg brand. So a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. And then 1 cup of plain water. And really, That is the hardest part of this whole recipe, except for the chopping, if you don't love chopping, but I do. So I'm good with that. So now what we want to do is we want to blend this until it is super duper creamy. So I'm going to turn this blender on and leave it running for a minute or two. So amuse yourself for a moment. Think of maybe a question or two you might have. I'll be happy to answer them. Interrupt me at any time, but I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute so that you don't get the jet engine noise of the blender. Okay, I know that felt like a long time, but that was just 1 minute. This is a pretty powerful blender. So I know that that should be enough. You'll notice that it goes from kind of a bright yellow to a very creamy, soft, off-white. It's really not even yellow anymore. When I taught this demonstration live, I would always bring this blender around to every single table in the class because the smell is out of this world. It is sweet and tangy and just luscious smelling. It is fantastic. And trust me, you know, I know there's some raw garlic in here, but it is not overpowering. This is an absolutely fantastic dressing. And what I love to do with this dressing is turn it into a dip. So what I will do is I will take this lovely, luscious, creamy gloriousness, and I'll put it in a bowl. Actually, this makes a lot of dressing, and typically I will reserve half the dressing. You can dress this as thickly or as thinly as you like, but I like to reserve some of it in a bowl. I will add more nutritional yeast, at least a quarter to a half a cup, stir it in, let it sit, then add some more chopped pickles to it, and it creates this fantastic veggie dip. One of my dear, dear friends is the pickiest eater on the planet. I swear he is. And he loves this dip. So as I said, this recipe it's pretty much no fail in terms of, you know, everybody liking it. It's lovely. It's delicious. It's creamy. It's satisfying. It's comforting. It is beautiful. I highly recommend you try this one. So if you're on the list, you're going to get this in the email. If you're not, send me your email in the chat or Q&A, and I'll make sure to get you on that list. So before we add the dressing, let's go ahead and add our extra veggies. So we have celery. Now, celery, I add a lot more than the recipe calls for. Whenever I have an opportunity to add extra non-starchy vegetables to a dish, I do, because that is just a beautiful opportunity to get more nourishment in there, more nutrients. And so celery is also very low calorie density, very high water. So this also cuts down the calorie density of the dressing. Now, again, these are whole food plant-based. So these are perfectly healthy. Cashews are great. It's just we don't want to go overboard, especially if we are trying to release excess weight. So I'm just going to put in my whole whack of celery here. And, you know, you can make this chunky or smaller bites. It's entirely up to you. Then pickles. Now, pickles are actually pretty good. The only problem with them, of course, is the sodium. But if you buy your pickles refrigerated, they should be full of probiotics as well. Now, with respect specifically to probiotics, there is a lot of question out there about, you know, what we should be doing. This is still an emerging science, but we do know that probiotics can help with digestion. And so as far as that goes, they can be helpful. Then you have all the prebiotics in the cucumber, all of that fiber, really, really good stuff for us. So this is 2 to 3 large pickles. If you're really watching your sodium, then you can do less if you like, or if you don't like pickles, you can add something else. One of the things that's really fun to add to this recipe is radish. It gives a nice little sharp bite, which is some people really enjoy. or red onion. I'm not an onion fan myself, but that's something that people like. So that's it. I mean, basically you can add whatever veggies you like, but I keep it really, really simple. Potatoes, celery, pickles, dressing. So what we want to do is drizzle the dressing on. Again, I'm going to reserve a little bit of it so I can make a dip later. You'll see there's lots of dressing in here. If you want to add the whole thing, go for it. It's delicious. Either way, I've had it both ways. So what you want to do when you're stirring this is just be a little bit careful because you don't want to mash those potatoes. So you just fold it in, go down, scoop up, go down, scoop up. And then just keep doing this until it is well blended. These potatoes are cooked perfectly though. They're holding together nicely for me. The smaller bites, the better, because when people eat this, they're going to not want to have to cut up the potatoes. And when you make the potato bites smaller before you cook them, it speeds up the cooking. So all around, that's a very good idea. You can see it's coming together nicely. Oh my gosh, this smell. I wish you were here with me. It smells amazing. Okay. Now, this is a classic potato salad, but there are lots of different kinds of potato salad. A German potato salad is more vinegary than it is creamy. I don't always add dill, but I'm going to today. Anytime you can add an herb, that's a really good idea because herbs are sort of a concentrated form of nutrition. We don't use a lot of them, like we're not going to use a whole cup of this or anything. You could if you really wanted to because it has a light flavor, but it just gives it a little sprinkling of bright green in there too, so that's very pleasing to the eye. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in. I don't always add it, like I said, but for today, just for you, I added it. So again, just gently fold that in. Now, when it comes to putting something like fresh herbs or onion or anything like that, I highly recommend that you pop this in the fridge and let it sit for an hour before you serve it. This is delicious right now, but if you pop it in the fridge, that nooch that's in the dressing will help it to set up and the flavors will marry a little bit more and the dill will kind of spread out and its flavor into the rest of the potatoes and the celery and everything and the pickles too. So there you are, potato salad. It is creamy, luscious goodness. Now, you see I put maybe 2/3 of the dressing in there and it is plenty creamy. So you can decide how much you want to add, but I highly recommend you try that dip. I'm actually just going to reuse my blender because I don't mind if these flavors mix a little bit. The next thing we're going to make is a pasta salad with my plant-based mayo recipe. So this mayonnaise that I make it's fantastic. We use it on sandwiches, we'll thin it out and use it as a dressing. It's really, really luscious and it's really good with this pasta salad. Now, when it comes to pasta salad, you can add all sorts of things as your sort of dressing that you add to it. One thing I highly recommend trying is hummus. Hummus is fantastic with pasta. Actually, it's great with potatoes too. But in this pasta salad, it is lovely. So I've just done some rotini pasta, the little corkscrew ones, because that's what I like. But you can do anything you like. You can do macaroni elbows or I would stay away from spaghetti, but you know, any of these ones that are in small bite-sized pieces. You silly, yeah. So one thing about plant-based pasta, especially brown rice pasta, this is whole wheat, but when it comes to pasta, after you cook it, it's a really good idea to rinse it with cold water so that it doesn't stick together so much for you. I'm going to reserve a little bit of this because it's too much in the bowl. So this is a lovely brown rice, whole wheat. I typically will use brown rice. That's one of my favorites, but there are so many different kinds of pasta out there. If you'd like to, up your protein a little bit, there are lentil pastas and, other kinds of beans, soy, all that kind of stuff. So It doesn't really matter which kind of pasta you use as long as it's these bite-sized pieces. So let's go ahead and get started on the mayo. So again, this is a cashew-based sauce. So it is a 1/4 cup though, this time, a 1/4 cup, which is really not very much when you spread it out all over the serving sizes. My handy dandy little strainer, isn't it cute? And then a 1/4 cup of tahini. Tahini is fantastic. Now, this is one of those situations where I highly recommend you wet your measuring spoon or cup before you put the nut butter or seed butter in it, because that will help it to release. But that's been sitting for a minute, so it's not going to release as nicely for me now. It really does help, though, to run it over under the faucet before you put that nut or seed butter in it. So this is the tahini brand that I use most often. The cool thing about tahini is that all it is ground sesame. That's what you're looking for. If it has anything else in it, find a different brand. So it should just be 100% sesame seeds ground up. Sesame seeds are fantastic because they are high in calcium. They are also a pretty good source of fat. Not ideal in terms of omega-3/6 ratio, but pretty good. So this is so flavorful. Whenever I make hummus, or a lot of variety of different kinds of sauces, I like to use this tahini if it needs sort of a more bold or rich flavor. So we want 1/2 cup of unsweetened plain plant milk. Now, this is what I'm using today. You can use whatever you like. This one is a soy milk. When you buy your soy milk, it should contain soybeans and water, period. This is an excellent brand. I also buy this one from Trader Joe's. This one's a little bit less expensive, a little bit lighter. It's fantastic. So there are multiple options out there. So we want 1/2 cup, and we don't want to get the vanilla flavor, or else that'll make this taste a little bit weird. I've done it with the vanilla because that's all I have, but it does change the flavor a smidge. We want 1/2 teaspoon of onion and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. In this instance, I'm definitely using the powder and not the raw garlic. So 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. 1.5 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. Now you're noticing a pattern here, right? And that's part of what I wanted to show you. In a lot of plant-based dressings, if they're similar dressings, so the creamy ones, etc., you're going to see very similar ingredients. So some people might be like, oh, am I ever going to use apple cider vinegar again? I go through this stuff pretty regularly, and it's actually quite healthful. Vinegar has special health properties, so it's a good idea to get about 3 teaspoons of vinegar in every day, especially if you're trying to release excess weight or boost your metabolism. So this is a 1/2 teaspoon measure, so we want 1.5 teaspoons. So I'm gonna put 3 of these little babies in there. Carefully. Oh, see what I did there? Gotta be careful. Oh, too much. It'll be okay. So you gotta love these lives because stuff always happens. But I like that. That's part of the excitement. So mustard again. So we want 1 teaspoon. That's 1/2 teaspoon. So that 2 of those is a full teaspoon. And 1 tablespoon of coconut aminos. So coconut aminos are fantastic. I have 2 kinds here that I want to show you. This is the one that I use most often, this brand, because it's a little bit lighter. Now, you can actually look on the back and look at the calories, and that'll give you an idea of if this is going to be a light flavor or a thicker, richer flavor. This one is, more watery, more marinade kind of consistency. This one is a little bit thicker and a little bit richer. So just pay attention to the calories. So this one has 25 calories per tablespoon. This one has 15 calories per tablespoon. And that'll give you an idea. This one is the lighter one. I'm going to use the richer one today. And that is 1 tablespoon. You can use this one because there's mustard in the recipe. Tablespoon. This stuff is awesome. So it has, if you haven't tried it before, it has a slight teriyaki kind of flavor. So it's like liquid aminos, but sweet, a little bit sweet. And so I love to sprinkle this if I'm going to bake some little tofu bites, or I love it on soy curls. Stuff is fantastic. Okay, again, what we want to do, and here, we just want to blend it until it is very, very smooth and creamy. Now, there's just a little bit of cashew in here, so this should blend up faster than the other one, but I'm, again, going to put you on mute so you don't have to listen to the jet engine that is the Vitamix blender. Be right back with you. So this one does come together more quickly, but you want to blend it for 2 to 3 minutes. And you can sort of see, you see the swirls in there? You can see this is much thicker than the last recipe. Now, when I want to use this as a mayonnaise, I put it in the fridge first, and it'll set up even thicker than it is now. So it'll start to, you can actually spread it with a knife. It'll get not quite as thick as a regular mayonnaise, but pretty darn close. If you want to use this as a dressing, then you can thin it down with water. That works just fine, and it's plenty flavorful like that. Or you can use one of your favorite vinegars. I've actually mixed this with balsamic vinegar, and it makes a lovely dressing, very, very flavorful. So if you wanted to mix this with some sort of thin liquid to thin it down, you can turn it into a dressing, but as it is, it's pretty thick. And if you leave it sit in the fridge, it will just continue to thicken. The lovely thing about plant-based sauces as well is that they freeze beautifully. You don't even need to reblend them. Take them out of the freezer, let them thaw, stir them a couple of times with a spoon or a knife, and you're good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this aside for a moment, because I want to show you some of the other things that we like to put in our pasta salads. I made some roasted cherry tomatoes. Now, this is the level of roasting that I like. I like them to be done and starting to pop a little bit. That's perfect for me. If you're my husband, Trent, then he'll actually put the broiler on and put a little char on these, kind of like a roasted red pepper. You know how it gets blackened a little bit? Only we won't be removing that. We'll be eating it, because what happens is that gets caramelized. That's caramelization. So that is very, very, very sweet. So when you mix in these cherry tomatoes into your pasta salad, the juice from these popped tomatoes will mix in, and it is a luscious combination of that tomato juice and the dressing together. It is really, really lovely. So that's one thing that we like to add. Another thing that's one of my husband's favorite things, add these at the very end, because they will get a little bit mushy on you as you're mixing them together. This is one of my husband's favorites. So Trent loves this one, taqueria mix. It is basically fermented spicy vegetables. And make sure to read the ingredients. We don't want any sugar. This one just has a bit of salt in it, but that is something to pay attention to if you're watching your sodium. So what he will do is pop a bunch of this in the food processor, zhuzh it up a couple of times just to give him some small bites, and then mix that into his pasta salad with the dressing. So this one is a mixture of a lot of different vegetables. So that creates a lot of different colors, which makes your salad beautiful. We want to add as many different colors and textures as possible. For me, because I'm a spice wuss, I'm going to skip that for today. And these are the things I'm going to add. Again, use your imagination. Add whatever it is that you like. Sugar snap peas. I have diced these up. I love sugar snap peas as an addition to a lot of dishes. Anything creamy, adding sugar snap peas with that bright, sweet flavor of the pea is fantastic. I will use this as a topper for things because, as I mentioned, I'm not a huge onion fan, although you should be trying to get in onions every day because they're really, really important, that aromatic group, onions, garlic, all that kind of stuff, which we do have in our dressing. This is an excellent topper. So it adds a splash of brightness, great color, and then a little bit of a sweet and juicy bite. So it's fantastic. So I'm going to add some chopped up sugar snap peas. I'm adding, and I like to add fresh peppers as well, but today I'm adding roasted red pepper. This is just from a jar. So if you buy jarred roasted red peppers, just make sure that it doesn't have any sugar or any other ingredients that we don't need in it. So roasted red peppers are very flavorful, high nutrient, low calorie density. So these are a fantastic thing to add to any kind of salad. I add these things quite liberally, actually. I use them in a lot of stuff. So we have the creamy color of the pasta, the bright green of the sugar snap peas, and now this vivid red of the roasted red pepper. One more thing that I love to add is olives. Now, these are Kalamata olives. Now, I like to use Kalamata because, and they're not everyone's cup of tea. So, use them or don't, it's up to you. But the reason I choose Kalamata instead of regular black olives is because this flavor is much stronger. And so you can use less of it and still get, the best bang for your buck. If you don't like olives, or if you want to choose a lighter option, another great thing to add is capers. So this is very Mediterranean capers. They're just little pea-sized salty bites if you've never had them before. These are fantastic. They're actually from a flower, and then they pickle them. So this is a wonderful thing to add. So it's very, very light, as I said, whereas the olives are a little more dense. But that's good fat in those olives. Remember that olive fat is good. But if you want to keep it a little bit lighter, or if you want to add even more flavor, you can try these little pea babies that are called capers. One more thing, if you don't want to do the roasted cherry tomatoes, you can put in some sun-dried tomatoes. Just chop them up. If you are going to add something like this, then you're going to want to mix it in and let it sit for at least an hour, because you want to get those, you want to allow the sun-dried tomato to soften a little bit in the dressing and other things you have in here. So for me today, I'm just going to add the olives. Another trick, if you want to lighten this up, is to chop these really fine. Then you get the little bits of olive flavor everywhere, and you can use less. So I'm going to wait to add the cherry tomatoes. As I said, those will break up on you. I'm going to go ahead and add the mayo. Now it's a little bit thick, but that's okay. Remember the cherry tomatoes will add some more liquid to this. So let's see how that is. You can always add more. You can always add more, but it's really tough to take that back out again. Okay, again, fold, fold, fold. The noodles are a little bit more tolerant than the potatoes. This bowl is very, very full. One of my favorite memes is always use a bigger bowl than you need when you're making salad, always. And I have to agree with that, because when I eat my salads, they tend to be in very large bowls. So just fold it in, fold, fold, fold. Be a little bit patient. You want to make sure that this gets distributed evenly, that all of your little flavor bites get distributed evenly amongst the pasta and the dressing. You can see it's pretty thick, but remember when we add those cherry tomatoes, that will water it down just a little bit. Not really water, but with tomato juice. Feel free to pop in. For those of you watching live, if you have any thoughts, questions, ideas, feel free to share. Okay, so that's pretty well mixed together. I'm going to go ahead and add my tomatoes now. You see that I cooked them on parchment paper. That way you don't have to use any oil. These are a little bit sticky. Remember, they're caramelized, so they're going to stick a little bit to that parchment paper. That's why the parchment paper is crucial. If you try to do this straight on your pan, you're going to have a bit of a mess on your pans and a not fun cleanup. My mouth is watering adding these things because when you bite into these little roasted jewels, it is just a luscious flavor sensation. All right. Just a couple more. Come on, babies, get off of that. Lovely. And again, no eggs, nothing in here that is potentially going to make your family sick if it's sitting out on a hot day. Of course, we don't want it out there for days and days and days. It will eventually go bad, but eggs and mayonnaise can be quite dangerous. They need to be kept very cool. So the fantastic thing about plant-based is you have less worry. I love less worry. We have enough stress as it is without adding, potentially poisoning our loved ones to that list. All right, look at that beautiful salad. Look at it. I wish I could share it with you. Remember, this salad is anything you want it to be. Any flavors you like. One of my favorite hummuses, I mentioned hummus earlier. So this plant-based mayo is fantastic. I'm going to put the rest of this in a little jar and use it for, sandwiches, tomato sandwich, plant-based BLT using tempeh bacon, which we have done before. This salad, though, you can use a lot of different things. One of the things that we've made in these cooking classes is hummus, and the roasted red pepper hummus that we made and the dill pickle hummus that we made would both be fantastic in this. So you don't really need to thin down hummus as a dressing, but you can. You absolutely can. I've actually used hummus as a dressing on a green salad as well, because I love this stuff. And you want to get your beans in every day. Remember, at the time of this recording, 1 cup to 1.5 cups is what is recommended. I want to thank you so much for watching quick cooking classes today. I hope you enjoyed those recipes. Feel free to pop over to my website, ppforlife.com, and look and see what I have for other recipes.